So I used to work at a Tim Hortons. If you watched my first video, you'll know that I started when I was just little baby Alana at 15 years old. Working there was interesting because on one hand, it gave me some valuable skills like how to manage your time and how to, well, talk to people. But on the other hand, working there was the most stressful job I ever had. Well, maybe except for one serving job I had, but that's a story for a different day. When I first started out, I would leave crying after almost every shift. Why was it so stressful, you may ask? Well, aside from needing to move at lightning speed every second of every minute, being timed, and needing to memorize a menu that constantly changed, it was the rude customers. Technically, we had to call them guests, but I'm gonna call them customers, out of spite. First of all, let me tell you, customers do not care if you're new. If you just started out and you're still learning what the heck you're even doing, customers would treat you like you're an expert they've hired, and it turns out that you lied on your resume. And getting between Tim Hortons customers and their morning coffee is like getting between a starving lion and a juicy steak. You do one thing wrong and you're done. I can't tell you how many times people said super hurtful things or were just so blatantly rude because we made a mistake or weren't fast enough, even though we're moving at a million miles a second handling hot coffee and tea. It's actually hard to think back on specific moments of people being rude because it happens so often that they all sort of blur together. Don't get me wrong, we had nice customers too, but most weren't. There was this one lady who came in who always ordered a bagel, and she would stare at every tiny thing you touched while making it. Not just stared, because most people stared at you while you worked, but she'd take it to the next level. She'd stare with squinted eyes, waiting for you to do one thing she didn't like. Then she'd yell at you. We had these cleaning cloths placed in sanitizer buckets to, clean. And she must have thought they were disgusting or something because if you dared wipe the food prep area with the clean rag before making her food, she'd yell, "I don't want my food made on top of that disgusting rag." So we'd have to make her food on top of a bunch of bagel wrappers just so none of it touched the food prep surface. And keep in mind, we replaced those cloths almost every hour. The soapy water in the buckets was also replaced every hour, and if a cloth even looked slightly dirty, it was replaced with a brand new one. Maybe she had OCD, which I get it, because I suffer from it too, but that's no excuse to be a jerk. There was one time where I was using the front store bathroom before my shift because someone else was using the bathroom at the back of the store and I really had to go. And some lady starts pounding at the door yelling, "Hello, hello," and I'm like, "Hello?" And then there was just silence. Then she starts banging at the door again and yells, "I need the bathroom." And in my head, I'm like, "Yeah, me too, lady. That's why I'm in here." So I hurry up and get out of the bathroom, and she's just there, right at the door, and pushes past me to go in. And I was just flabbergasted because keep in mind, I wasn't wearing my work uniform when I first went in, so she didn't know I worked at the store. She just treated a random stranger like they were using her own personal bathroom. And I was just like, well, that was interesting. Another time, a lady ordered at the counter and she started speaking French to one of my coworkers who didn't speak French. I live in Ontario, Canada, and lots of people speak French here. And her speaking it was fine, but when she found out he didn't speak French, she started to get all snooty and demanded to speak to someone who spoke French. I was the only one to overhear all this, and thankfully I do speak it, so I go over and take her order while he makes it. It would have been fine if she just asked nicely, especially because it's a right here to have someone serve you in French if you want, but she was just so rude about it. It's kind of a thing here where French speaking people will sometimes be snooty and think they're better than people who don't speak it. It's really annoying and gives us all a bad rap. Later, at another location I worked at, where I made the sandwiches and stuff, there was this one lady who wanted her bagel extra, extra, extra toasted. Like so toasted that it came out burnt. And I mean completely burnt. The thing was black by the time she was satisfied with it. It would catch fire multiple times while in the toaster, which for some reason the fire just went out on its own pretty quick. but then the whole store would smell like burnt toast for the next hour. There was also this one time when I was making sandwiches at that same store, and I cut my thumb while making a bagel. At first glance, the bagel knife doesn't look threatening, but it can do some damage. I had to drop everything and run to the back to get it washed and bandaged. The store owner was there at the time, let's call him Rob. He got me a few band-aids and made sure I was okay. He was cool. Everyone liked him. I don't know what happened while I was gone. Someone must have cleaned up the blood and thrown the prep board into the dishwasher and kept making food. I felt bad because it was during a rush and my little incident definitely slowed things down for both my fellow coworkers and the customers. No one was rude, thankfully, but then again, customers didn't really have a chance to be rude since you barely interact with them when working the sandwich counter. Making coffee and making the food were definitely my two favorite jobs because, being the introvert that I am, you barely had to talk to people. You just got in the zone, made the orders that popped up on the screen, and the time flew by. This was only after I'd been working at Tim's for a few years, though. It's like a seniority thing. The longer you work there, the more you have access to the good jobs. But yeah, there were times when customers weren't as rude, like Christmas time when people decide to give great tips, or when you worked the drive-through window when it was freezing out. Working the window during the winter was not fun, let me tell you. We could wear company-issued coats, but they belonged to the store, so they were huge and almost never got washed. You could buy your own coat, but they were way too expensive, and there was no way I was spending my hard-earned money on a company coat I'd only wear sometimes at work. Luckily, our uniforms were free, as they should be, but once you were done working there, you had to hand your uniform back in, which I think is a pretty good system. This other time, during COVID, the store was forced to follow a no mask, no service rule. So if a customer wasn't wearing a mask, we couldn't serve them. Although it was necessary for safety reasons, we hated this so much because it made an already grumpy customer base even more grumpy. We already had to deal with some of the meanest customers, and it only made things worse, because apparently wearing a thin piece of cloth on your face was the end of the world. One guy came in without a mask, and I told him, "Sorry, sir, but do you have a mask?" He was immediately annoyed and asked why he needed one. The store was dead at the time, so my coworkers could overhear the interaction. He kept arguing to the point where the owner's son had to come over and lay down the law. I thought the customer was gonna have a tantrum, like I was waiting for the guy to blow up at us, but thankfully he just said, "Wow, really?" and stomped out. So yeah, those were just a few occasions where customers were rude to us. Let me know if you'd like more stories. Bye! Why can't I talk?